This is Charlie Vetta and Mike Larson, Impostor, Polluting, Tor Metadata.
Awesome, thank you. All right, we know this is going to get a lot of press attention. We want you all to use our logo. Anything you write about this, please. All right, we're going to move quick because we appreciate that you're busy. So the TLDR is that intrusion detection systems can and do sniff out Tor users, and we think that's bullshit. So we brought false positives for everybody. The Tor overview, there's directory authorities. You get a consensus doc that your client caches, and it's so similar to HTTP and HTTPS that we can make your web browser generate false positives in an IDS.
We understand there's always opportunity cost, so we've made some attempts to reduce it. Other talks going on at the conference that you're missing.
Here. I don't know how to pick this fucking lock.
The other one.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
It's up.
Where?
Did anyone get the reference?
Maybe, but maybe intro that one.
There's some car hacking going on. We decided to cover the physical portion of the attack vectors related to car hacking. So.
What's happening? What my G? What my gosh?
They covered the digital part when full coverage for car attacks.
All right.
Well, I'm the graphic designer. I created that awesome logo that you saw. I dabble in security because privacy is the utmost importance.
Yeah, so just like you, we're interested in security and privacy, but we're also interested in arts and crafts. Here's one of our projects.
Oh yeah, the fake the badge contest. If you go to Goon and show them your fake badge, you win a black badge. So should do that.
Okay, so if you download Tor, warning number 6 of 6 on the download page is that the fact that you're using Tor, like it provides anonymity in the sense that people monitoring the wire can't see where you're going, but it doesn't hide the fact that you're using Tor. So the wording on this is a little vague on the web page, but essentially it means an IDS can detect that you're using Tor and log it. And sometimes this can have real consequences, like in the case of the Harvard bomb threat kid. So if you're unfamiliar, kid wanted to get out of finals. He sent an email via Gorilla Mail connecting over Tor. Turns out he was one of a handful of Tor users on the Harvard campus at the time. So the same day, they were able to track down through the logs and interview him and get a confession, although he hasn't been formally indicted yet.
Is Tor safe? That depends on what safe means. Understanding Tor, they're pretty upfront with what it's designed to do and what it's not. There's been quite a few talks about that.
And so Runa Sandvik from the Tor project presented a very good talk last year that you all should watch if you're curious.
Endpoint security is still important. If you got vulnerabilities in the software that you're using, that could obviously be exploited. For example, Onion browser and the Firefox exploit that you may be familiar with. To help with that, there's a portal. There's a person named Grug. Q.
The Grug.
The Grug. Okay.
Yeah,
all right.
like yeah.
So he has a device that you put upstream, and if your endpoints were compromised, it would end up not leaking any data.
All right, so we brought a portal of Pi to give away. It's supposed to be for certified Unix network technicians only. But we're just going to give it away to somebody in the audience. We think it's fine because a lot of y'all look like cunts.
So the bridging issue, defaults matter as it's set up. If you were to use it by default, or it creates a bunch of signatures that will show how they're getting caught. But if you use these pluggable transports that use various forms of steganography, they can be used to obfuscate the fact that you are connecting Tor, but that is not one of the direct goals of Tor itself, to be clear.
Okay, so we're going to show some signatures here in a few minutes, and when you initially look at them, it's a little confusing because they're matching different pieces in different places. And essentially, they fall in these three categories: either clients connecting to the Tor network, or connections coming from the Tor network, or leaking information, stuff that should have, traffic that should have been routed over a Tor tunnel, but was not. IDS is sort of a boring blue team thing, and a lot of y'all may not bother to keep up to date with the latest in IDS news. So we're going to start, like, if you're not familiar with the 1998 insertion evasion and denial of service paper, it's worth reading even now. And then nothing happened for a couple of years.
It's comprehensive history here we assembled.
Finally, like in 2004, still nothing happened. Nothing happened for a while. And then last year, Cisco bought SourceFire for $2.7 billion.
Cambrian explosion, for sure.
So you're up to date on what's been happening with IDS.
So there's some example rules that will trigger using snort. The highlighted red portion is all that it takes to trigger an alert, which would be supportive of someone using Tor at that time. You can see the example rules there, and the JavaScript at the bottom is what we have assembled to induce those, quote, false positives.
And it's important to note that these VRT rules actually probably aren't going to work in a default client configuration. Like in the example of the first one, it's just matching that straight HTTP content, but from the directory specification, but that traffic now by default, it goes over like a one-hop Tor circuit. And the second case, this has been, the signature, while it's still in the official VRT rules, would only match like a Tor 0.1 client when there is still client certificate validation. You can read about that at the link there.
Similar rules, matching binary content. The like 05 hex onion is matching like the dot onion that you'd see in DNS. Same thing on for exit that you see in red.
Yeah, and if you're not familiar with reading snort rules, the piece between the pipes is just a raw match on a hex representation of bytes. So the 10 bytes are just straight from the DNS flags. And
I revoke when I said dot. There's no dot.
yeah, there's no dot. The number ahead of the TLD is just the length of the TLD. And that's straight from the RFC. So for this one, ETOpen also has a bunch of rules that's detecting traffic from Tor nodes. Like as we mentioned very quickly in the discussion at the beginning, there's it's the Tor relays and the Tor exits are it's all published information. So in this case, you see this is just an example of hundreds and hundreds of straight IP match rules for traffic sourced from Tor nodes. So in the case of the first one, we need to make a TCP connection from a Tor node to your host to generate the false positive. So in that case, what we did is there's our Tor relay that we stood up called Impostor. And on there is running a web server. That this is just the source code. It's just showing it's going to connect back to you when you connect to it. So this will generate a hit on that ETOpen signature showing a connection from the Tor network to you. In the second case, it's a little bit more difficult to generate UDP traffic from JavaScript from your browser. So what we did to get a UDP packet is we looked at some of the relays. Some of the relays also happen to be DNS servers. So we set up some lame delegations under the domain lame-delegation.net and added some host names that point to these Tor nodes. They're also DNS servers. So when you look up those domains, your domain server is going to get an X domain response from those boxes, generating a Tor alert sourced from the Tor network, destined for your recursive DNS server. Oh, and I guess I should actually show that that's in place. So this is the Tor node. This is the IP address. This is the emerging threads. And it's in the list of hundreds and hundreds of Tor nodes that come with that rule set.
Another IDS, bro. This is the code that matches. Is this the certain?
It's the subject initial. What was that?
Go ahead and take it.
Okay, it's just matching the subject and issuer from the TLS handshake because there's Tor does not use valid host names. It uses just sort of a random string of characters. So it looks for those weird looking certs, and if there's enough of them, Bro will send an alert. But because it's just a TLS handshake that it's matching on, you can just point your browser to any Tor node, make that TLS handshake, and trigger that alert.
A lot of pros and cons to using JavaScript. The publishing part is probably the most relevant. This can be induced through cross-site scripting. For example, when it frames someone, if they're, on the Tor network, a lot of people use time correlation. Ad networks, that's another source that you can use to get this JavaScript code running that would induce these IDS alerts. And there's some examples. You just essentially plug that into your code on your site, intranet, wherever you want to have these alerts triggered, and you'll start generating the alerts on the NIDs.
So all of the users of your website can become fake Tor users, providing coverage for everybody that uses Tor from those networks. And I would totally trust us to host that JavaScript. I wouldn't recommend pulling it down or auditing it yourself.
So there's a few limitations we had to work around here. Here's a list of them.
So like XHR, you can't write arbitrary headers. So there's things like the user agent that the spec doesn't allow you to overwrite. So that has to come from the browser. The browser can't make just arbitrary connections to TCP ports. There's a handful that are prohibited. There's a blacklist of ports. There used to be attacks, cross-protocol scripting attacks that allowed you to send an email from a browser by pointing it to an IP address, port 25, posting, and hoping that the mail server would ignore all the HTTP header information and just match the ASCII text of the post body. So a list of those ports, you can find them in the Tangled Web. From a browser JavaScript perspective, you don't have a lot of ability to generate UDP traffic, but of course all the matches, Tor doesn't tunnel UDP, all the matches are probably just going to be DNS, and of course you can generate DNS traffic. And there's also a challenge in getting, for the first batch of signatures we saw, where we're just matching simple bytes like get to our server, it's hard to, from an HTTPS site, to generate clear text traffic because the mixed content warnings are pretty robust. They follow all sorts of weird use cases like following redirects, calling other protocols, calling WebSockets. You can't call a non-encrypted WebSocket from an encrypted site. So if you have suggestions on getting around mixed content warning, we'd like to hear them.
There's various other detection techniques. Here's a few. There's a time synchronization one published. There's the TBB user agent and 512 byte cells. You want to cover those in any detail? There's the URLs if you need to.
So I think the most interesting one is the user agent. So the Tor browser has a fixed user agent that's like a trade-off to prevent fingerprinting. Like if you're familiar with the Panopticlick project, there's a lot to identify you in a normal browser user agent, or a combination of installed plugins, things like that.
Yeah, so this is all generic. Essentially all you need is a device with a TCP/IP stack that would take data from a protocol and end up connecting to an arbitrary host with some data. So we just, this would apply to any of those protocols. We just abused browsers because they're really popular. But it introduces this question: is it possible to write any rules that cannot be spoofed? Yes, there is if people change the protocols, but it does a lot already.
Okay. So what we'd like you to do is go to the website Impostor.io and let us know if it triggers IDS alerts, if you're responsible for security infrastructure. If it doesn't work, take a look yourself. Let us know what you think the traffic should be. And there's contact information on the website. I'd be happy to help you. We'd be happy to help you figure out how to generate matches against your closed source tools. If you want to help, again, visit the website and support the Tor project. One key part about supporting anonymity online is here it's a very popular opinion, but when you get back to the real world, a lot of people, it's not a popular opinion. A lot of people are more worried about terrorists and pedophiles than supporting freedom online. All right, there's a quick summary. If you have questions, meet us in the chill out room after this talk. And thank you very much. And we have some important research introduced from our colleague Joe.
Okay guys, this is about to be some heavy shit here.
This is where it gets deep.
When we were doing this Tor stuff, we ran into these packets and we were going through these leaked documents that Snowden let us view, and turns out there's these walking bipedal nuclear tanks, and there's a codename Metal Gear. And we were going through these packets and they seem to be using this old game protocol as a stego to hide their real process. And as we were going through this, we started to see these repeating bytes. Now, little did we know, it has something to do with bitwise operators and exclusive stuff. So we outsourced it to Snowden, and he actually figured it out for us. And it's this thing called XOR. So we're now able to read their traffic with these nuclear tanks. And supposedly, they want us to think that somebody reverse engineered these video games and the network protocol, and if you hack your PS2 and PS3, you can start playing this game again. But that's not the truth. So we're going to go ahead and describe this protocol for you so you can start checking it out and actually find out the truth. So there's these command identifiers right here, and they tell the client what it's actually going to do, and the payloads will be in the end. And there's an MD5 checksum that will do verifications across them. All you have to do is MD5 the payload with the command header, and you're good to go. So you can go ahead and hop on this and actually find out what they're actually doing with Metal Gear. Supposedly, there's a amphibious one that's going to be coming out soon. And just go ahead and start exploring from there. Fucking chemtrails, man.